Yo, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Optimize Your Body podcast. Thanks for joining me. And today, the topic of discussion is going to be on something I've finally discovered, right? And that is the perfect fat loss diet. And not just for fat loss, but overall health, metabolic health, mental health, even, right? Finally found it, right? So hear me out on this. First of all, right, please, if you're listening on YouTube, just subscribe to the channel. Just click the subscribe button beneath this. It'll help us get bigger guests on, and it'll be a massive help. But I really do appreciate everyone's support who listens. One more thing before we get into it, I mentioned the 5 pounds gone. In other words, you're going to lose 5 pounds of fat, right? On this challenge, free challenge that I'm going to be launching. It's a 21-day challenge. And essentially, I want to be clear here, right? Because there's loads of bloody challenges out there. Let's be honest, right? But I'm all about why I'm in this and the impact that I want to have on you when you join the challenge. And that is for you not to just be able to lose 5 pounds of fat. That essentially is the byproduct of the things you're going to implement. Now, I'm going to teach you how to lose this fat in number one, the easiest way. Number two, the way which is more enjoyable. And number three, in a way where you can sustain it. Also, you're going to get my one-to-one support, right? So you literally got me in your corner, just like pretty much a normal client, right, for 21 days. And we're going to have a community and everything. It's going to be really exciting. I've started building it and stuff now. So I've had loads of people already apply. I haven't even announced it yet. I announced it on the podcast. It's already like, Jesus Christ, I'm getting overwhelmed already. The link is just beneath this. By the way, I've now agreed on the date for the start of the challenge, and it's going to be Monday, the 12th of August. I figured 50% of you are in America, which means it's summer there, right? No one's going to be doing a challenge in July. Like, it's just stupid, right? So Monday, the 12th of August until Sunday, the 1st of September. Those 3 weeks is where the 5 pounds gone is the name of the challenge. Rapid fat loss challenge is going to be underway. So simply you have to apply. I can't take everyone on, of course. There's going to be a screening process. The link is basically in the show notes below, right? So you can just simply click the link and apply. Anyway, let's get into it. So basically, perfect fat loss diet, right? Guess what it is? I need to come up with a fancy name for it, ladies and gents, right? You hear me talk about this all the time, right? Can you help me out here? Like, what can I call it? The real food diet, the single ingredient diet, the whole food diet. I got to think of a spicier name, right? But not only am I going to bore you with all the stuff I've talked about before, ladies and gents, right? This is going to be gold, this episode. I'm telling you now, if you want to get into the shape of your life, it doesn't matter what level you're at, right? If you're obese, if you're super overweight and you're at square one, if you're already in motion, you're in good shape, you want to get to the next level and, you know, shift some stubborn body fat, get your physique to the next level, improve your longevity, because all this kind of goes hands in hand. In other words, you know, live longer, improve your metabolic health, you know, reduce your risk of bloody having to take medication and, you know, trying to rely on the healthcare system. Don't want to be doing that. It's going to cost you a lot of money to take care of you later down the line, right? Especially in America, that shit's going to cost you a lot. Anyway, you don't want to be doing that, right? So this is going to be helpful for everyone listening. And ultimately, I want to delve deeper into my personal battle with overeating, ultra processed foods. And essentially, you know, obviously that impacted me in many different areas. I wasn't obese, but I was struggling, ladies and gents. I'm going to just delve into that. I'm going to share what some of my highest performing clients do as well, right? To get themselves into insane shape and maintain that all year round seamlessly, pretty much. That's how they make it look anyway, right? It's not really that easy when it comes to nutrition. But also I'm going to delve deeper into essentially how you're going to do this. Like, what strategies can I put in place to help me minimize? You're not going to be able to completely eliminate all ultra processed foods for the rest of your life, right? Most people are not going to do that. But how can you minimize those foods so it's basically you're hardly eating them, right? That's the only way. You can listen to all this science, all this information from all the experts, and they'll tell you all these scientific terms. But when it comes to what you want to do, you want to improve your health. You want to lose fat. You want to look better. You want to live longer. You want to have more energy for your kids, right? That's a big thing I hear. You've got kids. You want to run around from them, not just now, but later down the line. And that ultimately is the most important thing. You heard Mark Loblin say on my podcast, you know, when you've got kids and stuff, you need to have the energy to play with them. These things you cannot do when you're not healthy. And when you're eating too much ultra processed foods, not only are you harming yourself, you're harming others around you, especially if like look, don't take this the wrong way. And I'm not trying to insult or make people feel down, but we're all going to eat some of those foods. Be clear here. But when you're eating them regular, and you're feeding these to your kids or people you love, or you're just eating those foods all the time, it's not a good example to set. because those foods are engineered to be highly profitable. They don't care. They don't think about health at all when they're designing these foods. In fact, they know it's going to make people fatter and more sick, right? But they don't care because all they care about is money. And that's it. They don't give a shit about you. So they're going to manipulate your brain and engineer these foods to make them highly palatable. So you're addicted to them and you get fat and you get sick, right? That is the goal with these foods. Simple as that. So if there's anything you can take away from anything I've ever told you, this podcast is going to be probably one of the most important ones. All right. So let's get into it. So first of all, when people, follow a diet, for example, right, you hold these different diets, there's millions of them, right? Carnivore, keto, vegan, paleo. Look, I'm not going to bore you with all the different diets. We all know there's a million of them out there, and they work. Like I said before, right? They actually work, these diets, until they stop working, right? Because most of them, people can't stick to them. But what have they all got in common? Most of them, not all of them, right? Not if we're talking about bloody Slim and World and those bullshit ones like that, right? Obviously, You, you heard me lost my trail of thought then, ladies and gents. I got these cushions on the couch over in the corner of my house, and I just caught my eye, and they were putting me off. I had to put them out of my sight. Anyway, as I was saying, Slim and World and all those bullshit diets there, they actually don't care, right, about ultra processed foods and stuff like that. It's just like points, and people get nowhere, right, essentially on those diets. So basically, but what most of them they work until they don't work. They work short term, but people cannot stick to them. So ultimately, excuse the noise there. I'm trying to clear my desk here, right? Because I don't know why I'm getting distracted so fast. I don't know what's gone into me. Maybe I'm hungry, but no, seriously. So they all basically minimize these ultra processed foods. Carnivore diet, you're eating meat mainly. You're eating paleo. You're eating mainly paleo diet is like meat, fruit, vegetables, avoiding gluten, dairy, yada yada yada, and essentially avoiding all these ultra processed foods. That's what they have in common, and that's why they work temporarily, and they would work for the most part. They would, I don't know how long they work for, but it would work for a decent amount of time if people could stick to them, but they're too restrictive, right? So let me explain to you, ladies and gents, what an ultra processed food is. Essentially, ultra processed food is, because we talk about these foods, but I'm going to be honest, a lot of you listening to this now, you're going to listen to the information I give you and you're going to go back. And that's fine. Some of you won't. Some of you are going to implement, and you're just going to go back to doing what you were doing, right? And do you know why that is? And I'm not blaming that on you fully, because you're listening to this podcast, you're listening to me, ramble on for half hour. So you obviously want to change and you want to level up, but those foods are engineered to basically get you addicted, and it becomes a habit eating those foods, and you just go back to doing what you were doing. So listen to what I'm saying. An ultra processed food is basically derived from a natural food. Which is essentially being stripped of nutrients, right? And put through like an industrial process. And like I said, it's highly profitable, convenient for us as well, right? And hyper palatable, right? It taps into those senses. They normally put the perfect combination of like salt, fat, sugar, the perfect ratio, and even texture, right? To make us just eat more of those foods so they can sell more and more product and essentially fill up their pockets, right? So, and they're also like high in preservatives and additives. Obviously, some of these foods, you can keep them on the shelf for bloody years and nothing happens to them. They don't go off. Or what does that tell you? They got loads of chemicals in them, which are preserving them, right? So, look, we all know the examples of these foods. I don't want to bore you too much with like information, ladies and gents. I want to give you wisdom and strategies and tactics and mindset tips that you can implement to actually get, some progress with. But we all know, bread, like with the ultra processed foods, yes, bread is ultra processed, right? People eat bread okay. If you're eating, wholemeal bread or sourdough bread, is it better than just eating white bread? Yes. Is it processed? Yes, it is ultra processed. Now, some of these breads, though, they've literally got 2 or 3 ingredients in it. Might just be, a bit of wheat, gluten, and then maybe one other thing, salt. Great, right? That's not technically ultra processed. So that's going to be better than having white bread. But, white bread in particular, pasta, cakes, biscuits, sweets, crisps, potato chips, all these foods, right, which is essentially about 90% of the supermarket, right? Think about when you walk into these supermarkets, what have you got? You got your fruits, you got your little section with your meats and your vegetables. Really, it's about 80, 90% absolute garbage, right, in the supermarket. So be mindful of that as well. And I want to just touch on my experience, right, and this strategy of, even when I was coaching people, the strategy of adding in, I've mentioned this before, adding in whole foods and real foods to their diet, high protein, single ingredient foods, for example, and just more good quality single ingredient foods, right? Meat, fruit, vegetables, those kind of things, even, I don't know, Greek yogurt, those things. You could, Greek yogurt is not ultra processed, right? Because it's got about 3, 4 ingredients in it. If you get good quality stuff, it's just essentially milk, right? And 1 or 2 other things. It's not ultra processed, loads of chemicals in there, for example. So when I started adding in those foods for clients and for myself on my journey, which I'll touch on now, rather than telling them, because I'll be honest with you, right? Anyone who's been coaching people or personal training or coaching or whatever, and they've done it for a long period of time, they've gone through a journey, right? If they're good, if they're great, right? Like I consider myself to be a great coach. And ultimately, it took me a long time to stop telling clients not to do this and not to do that. And that's because I was doing the same thing. Don't eat that. Don't eat this. Don't eat, cut that out. Cut this out. Cut that out. That was my approach as well when I was binge eating, right? And adding in real foods instead of constantly trying to pull away all of those ultra processed foods all at once is the best strategy. Why is that? Because naturally you start replacing those foods when you start eating better quality food. You have less desire to eat the ultra processed foods. And I've seen it happen with hundreds of clients. They just gradually start wanting to eat more protein, more meat, more vegetables, bitter fruits, all those kind of, they want to because they enjoy it. And then they have, we have certain recipes and stuff like that they actually start enjoying. And ultimately they enjoy it and then it feels easy and they get in great shape and they have less desire to eat those ultra processed foods. And what I do here, and I notice this myself, is when they eat certain ultra processed foods now, they actually don't taste like real food. Like one of my clients recently said, I was in the airport and I had like a bag, I think it was a bag of, what was it, Skittles or something like that, maybe M&Ms. He had a bag of M&Ms and he said, I ate like, 6 or 7 of them and it just tasted like I was eating chemicals. It didn't taste like real food anymore. Whereas before I started the program, I would have eaten, 5 packets, no problem. So, you actually start rewiring your brain because these foods literally hijack your brain. And in my case, obviously, when I was bodybuilding and everything else, I went through a period, I'll cut a long story short, where leading up to bodybuilding, I was actually doing better. When I look back, I wasn't really aware of what I was doing, but I was naturally, I remember my girlfriend at the time, she used to eat healthy. And obviously we all know social influence is one of the most important things when it comes to how you eat and live. And she used to eat things like salmon, vegetables, all those kind of things. And we used to go to this place called Costco where you could get like lots of it for cheaper. And I used to get like this frozen vegetables. And I was thinking, wow, this actually tastes good. I was in great shape at the time, but I was eating like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just eating garbage. And then I started eating more better quality foods with her. Like I say, single ingredient foods, salmon, meat, vegetables, those kind of things, and actually enjoying those foods. And then about a year or two after that, I started my first bodybuilding comp, and then it all went downhill. And I'm not going to bore you with the whole reason behind that. Cut a long story short, restrictive. It's the same mindset, just more extreme as what most people listening to this are struggling with. Is like restricting some of those foods, not really working for you. You end up overeating them, self-sabotaging or whatever it is, and then basically gaining fat or just getting nowhere. So what I was doing is when I bodybuilding and then boom, restricting. And then what I call a symptom eruption after the shows, I would just eat everything in sight. And I would actually make lists on my iPhone of all the restaurants, all the foods I wanted to eat, and it became an obsession. And then it took me about 18 months to 2 years to actually break free of those sabotaging, unhealthy behaviors with food on the weekends, essentially just binge eating pizzas, Ben and Jerry's. My thing was getting a large Domino's. I don't recommend this. Don't try this at home. Large Domino's pizza. I would get 4 Domino's cookies. Don't try them. Dangerous. Warm cookies from Domino's, right? And then I would get a tub of peanut butter Ben and Jerry's, right? And I would eat the whole tub and the 4 Domino's cookies after eating a whole large pizza to myself and the big, massive garlic dip to go with that, which is probably about 400 calories on itself. So I was plowing through like 3,000 to 4,000 calories in one sitting. And that's what it was like. And then I had to go through that process, as I say, of going, okay, my gut's screwed. This is not working for me. Mentally, I feel like shit. I'm losing my abs. That used to frustrate me as well. Let's be honest. When you gain fat, it's annoying as fuck. And realistically, you feel down on yourself, right? You look in the mirror and you're like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? But again, like I don't want to say it's not your fault because the bottom line is you want to take ownership. but it's however you want to frame that. Yes, you're making the decision to put these foods in your mouth. No one's force feeding you, but it's kind of not your fault. And it's kind of unfair because these foods are not designed to be moderated, right? So look, that is the strategy. And I'm going to kind of teach you how to do this now anyway, right? But long story short, let's take you on to where I'm at now, right? And this is going to be helpful for you, right? Because today I wanted to use an example, right? I went to Aldi's, right? Because eggs, man, they got this, I don't know what's going on, all this chicken, I don't know, bloody bird flu, whatever it is, all this bullshit. I don't know what's going on in the world now. Most of it's just bullshit. I don't know what's going on, right? And all the egg scarcity, egg prices gone up, all this nonsense, right? They're just trying to get money out of us, right? Let's be honest. Anyway, so I had to go to Aldi's to get cheaper eggs, right? Good quality eggs. I went there and then boom, I'm looking around, right? And I'm seeing all these different foods that I haven't had for a while. I looked at these, and this in my heyday of overeating in the bodybuilding days, I used to eat these chocolate rice cakes, right? And I used to get like 1 kilo tubs of almond butter or sometimes peanut butter, and I would just like lather the peanut butter or almond butter on these chocolate rice cakes and just plow through loads of them, right? And I saw these, and I looked on the packet, I was looking at the ingredients, and then I saw like these cashews and date bars and stuff like that. And look, I looked at the ingredients, right? And it was just dates and cashews, and they were made into bars. But then I thought to myself, what you got to be aware of, though, is that's just carbs and fat together. And when you just, if I got in this 5 bars in a box, I'm eating all 5 bars rapidly, ladies and gents, right? So when you buy them and you keep them in the house, you're going to overeat them. Now, they're not technically ultra processed because it was 2 ingredients, but it's still processed and it's still carbs and sugar combined together with no protein, which makes you want to eat more of them. They're palatable. They taste good. And again, they're still designed to make you eat more of them. So I didn't buy them for that reason. And then I was looking at other things in the store. And long story short, it's the behaviors that those foods promote. Like if I got those chocolate rice cakes, I looked at the ingredients and it wasn't too bad, to be fair. It was like, normally I have like 90% dark chocolate, but it was like 60% chocolate. Okay, not ideal, quite a bit of sugar, but it was like literally, I think it was puff rice. And then like, I think it was like one other ingredient. I can't think what it was. I was like, oh, it's not too bad. But I thought to myself, but they're going to taste great. And it's enough sugar to make you eat the fuck out of them. And then I'm going to be smashing through all the whole packet. There's like 8 of them in a packet. And I don't need them. And then it promotes those behaviors of eating more sugar. Then I want more sugar the next day. And it becomes a slippery slope, right? So I didn't buy any of those foods, right? And I'm just getting my stuff and walking out of there. But all this to say, I want to give you another example now of like the kind of ultra processed foods to avoid. Quest bars, right? Protein bars. I love Quest bars, and I try not to eat them often, right? Because they've got, again, a bunch of different ingredients in them. They've got what's it called? The artificial sweeteners in them as well, right? And this is something I want people to be mindful of. Now, I'm not with the camp of people that say you can have, as many artificial sweeteners, they don't make you gain fat. There's no calories in them, right? The research is very clear on this now, especially sucralose, for example, which is, I think, about 150 times sweeter than sugar. It changes your gut flora. So it actually makes you want to eat more. There's a lot going on with the gut, which they're still figuring out. And we're more bacteria than we are human, literally. I think we've got like 3 more bacteria cells to human cells. So we're 3 times more bacteria than we are humans, or something like that, right? So there's like trillions of bacteria living in our body. And to tell us that, it's okay to eat these artificial sweeteners when they don't really know fully the impact of them yet, just like what they did with smoking, right? Cigarettes back in the day. Oh, it's actually killing people rapidly. Oh, cigarettes kill you, right? So it took them years of like research and stuff to actually figure out cigarettes kill you, right? So I'm not saying they're like as bad as cigarettes, but I'd rather err on the side of caution and not overdo these foods. Now, will I eat Quest bars? Fuck yeah, I enjoy eating them. So I actually bought one earlier on. But what I realized, right, I wanted to share this with you, ladies and gents, something I picked up on recently, is the other week, I think I had about 4 Quest bars in a week. I had like 3 days in a row, I had a Quest bar with my coconut yogurt and my fruit in the evening, right? After my like evening meal. And what I noticed was I started getting hungry. Normally I'll fast, right? I won't eat until about maybe 11 a.m., maybe midday, right? I'll have my black coffee in the morning and that's it. And sometimes a bit of 90% dark chocolate. But anyway, I don't normally get hungry. And I noticed that I was getting really hungry the next day. And I'm like, I never get this. I feel like I need to eat now. Like I'm ravenous. I noticed I was getting a sudden surge and I'm like, I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, is it the Quest bars? I'm like, okay, well, maybe it must be that. So then the next week, I think I did it again. I thought I'm going to test this out, right? So I did like 2 days in a row. The Quest bars, sure as shit. On the 3rd day, I started feeling ravenous hungry on my fast. Like I had to break the fast early. And I'm like, this literally never ever happens, ladies and gents. I can't even explain to you how I just do not get hungry in the mornings, right? And yeah, it's got to be that, right? This research clear, sucralose in particular actually changes your gut bacteria and makes you more hungry. So it activates, and I think it has an impact on hormones. Obviously, the gut and hormones are linked, and hormones such as ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone, it increases ghrelin hormone and stuff like that, right? Which makes you more hungry. So yeah, it goes to show that it's the behavioral impact of eating these foods, ladies and gents, right? That you need to be mindful of. And don't get me wrong, no offense, but not many people are going to be at this level of awareness, right? Where you've eaten whole foods for long enough and you've got to the level I'm at with my health and my behaviors with food, and obviously the shape I'm in and everything else. Obviously, it's taken years and years of awareness to get here, right? So that's something that I picked up on last week. But I wanted to talk about quickly and shout out to my client Mel. I know she listens to most episodes, and shout her out because she gives me feedback as well. And it's hard to get feedback off people. I do get a bit, but yeah, I just wanted to say, using Mel as an example, right? My highest performing clients, ladies and gents, who get the best results and eat healthy are my clients who eat predominantly whole foods. Now, Mel, she eats mainly whole foods. She eats super high protein, which is what I'm going to touch on quickly. She has a lot of protein. Like we're talking about, probably averages 150 grams of protein a day for a woman who only weighs, 60 odd kilos, right? It's a lot of protein. And she does that no problem. She gets all of that through meat and eggs. And then she has vegetables, fruit. She has a decent more carbs than most clients, but she's the body type where she needs more carbs. And carbs, like I said on the last episode, actually restricting them for the most part makes you fat. She doesn't have a massive amount of sugar, but she eats all whole foods predominantly, right? And she has no problem in terms of not over consuming calories. And the same patterns go for all my highest performing clients. When I look at their food diary, they're eating predominantly what? You guessed it, single ingredient foods mainly, right? At least 90% of the time. Beef, avocado, berries, but not single one ingredient in the foods that they're eating predominantly. Right now, for example, today I had a protein powder today because I was trying to drag my fast out for longer. So I had a protein shake because I trained this morning. And protein powder, yeah, if I look at I got a good quality one, it's probably got about like 5 or 6 ingredients in it. I wouldn't class that as ultra processed foods, but I would be mindful, ladies and gents, if you are having protein powders, again, artificial sweeteners. Most of them are garbage and they contain normally 2 of the 3 worst artificial sweeteners. So I would recommend being mindful of or avoiding, for the most part, aspartame, which you get in like Diet Cokes. Look, you're going to have Diet Cokes, those kind of things every now and then. Don't be too extreme. But if you find yourself doing those things every day, that can be a problem. And I see these patterns with myself and clients who have those foods, even these low, 0-calorie, highly sweetened foods, that they actually end up eating more processed foods. It's just, I see the patterns. Right. So basically aspartame, Ka sulfame is another one, and then sucralose. And you'll find that in those, even in protein powders and stuff. Like the one I used to have in my binge eating days, used to have all those 3 artificial sweeteners in there. I would eat the fuck out of them. You know what I mean? So yeah, be mindful of those artificial sweeteners. But yeah, like some of my clients will have protein powders and stuff like that, of course, to hit their protein targets. I don't class that as ultra processed, but basically they're eating like 90% single ingredient foods. So when I go like food shopping, ladies and gents, right, this is another thing I want you to be mindful of in terms of the perfect fat loss diet. Finally, we found it, ladies and gents, the whole food diet. It's so boring that, and we need to find a better name for that. Help me out with that, ladies and gents. But when you go shopping, look at ingredients over calories, right? So rather than looking at, yes, you want to be mindful of calories for sure. You definitely want to be mindful of calories. Don't take this the wrong way, but ingredients are more important. Have a look, right? When you're buying these foods, especially if you're getting any foods which come out of the packet, have a look. Do they have more than like 2 or 3 ingredients, or 4 or 5 most? I'm going to give you an example now. I just put it on the floor, did I? No, I got my bar of dark chocolate here because I wanted to read the ingredients out on there. There's like 4 ingredients, right? But it's low in sugar. It's got dark chocolate. It's got cacao solids. Sorry, what's it got here? No, cacao mass, cacao butter. Am I pronouncing that? Cacao mass, cacao butter, low fat cacao powder, and sugar, right? So yeah, it's got 4 ingredients, and yeah, it's got some sugar in there, but it's 90%, and it's not a huge amount of sugar. So I don't find that I overeat it because it's mainly fats, right? But if you find in, packaged food, which has got more than like 4 or 5 ingredients, the other thing I eat, which is technically processed, but I wouldn't class it as ultra processed, is coconut yogurt. I have that, every day, and that's got about 4 or 5 ingredients in it, right? It's got like coconut cream, it's got water, it's got some like hickory root fiber in there, and then it's got 1 or 2 other things in there. But basically, that's about it. So look at the ingredient when you go shopping. Like ideally, you want to be filling your basket up with mainly single ingredient foods anyway, right? High protein, good quality single ingredient whole meats like grass-fed beef, chicken thighs or chicken breasts, your oily fish like your salmon or your mackerel, or even a little bit of tuna, but don't go crazy with that because of the mercury and arsenic compounds that obviously tuna eats. Um, yeah, that's the kind of eggs, of course. And if you can tolerate dairy, getting good quality organic, if you can get non-pasteurized, though, if you can get proper raw pressed milk or A2 organic full fat milk, for example, if you can tolerate dairy, great. Like literally, you could probably survive on milk and nothing else and not get a nutrient deficiency. I wouldn't recommend that. Same goes for like beef as well. Wouldn't recommend doing it, but goes to show you've got all of the bioavailable nutrients you need in those foods. And then other single ingredient foods, if you can tolerate vegetables, you don't get any issues with plant compounds. I think most people are totally fine, to be honest, eating vegetables and salad and fruit. But be mindful of having lots of fiber if you do get bloated, for example. Then 2 seconds, I'm just going to turn on this light in the room because it's actually got dark all of a sudden. But yeah, you want to be getting those single ingredient foods mainly. And, that's when it comes to kind of being creative and stuff when you're eating. You've got to try different things. It's like, right, okay, how about, I'm eating beef. I'm getting a bit bored of eating beef, although you definitely got dropped on your head as a kid if you get bored of eating steak. But if you do, right, or, I'm bored of eating, chicken and stuff like that, make a stir fry or something, right, with single ingredient foods mainly. You could even like, okay, this has probably got one or two ingredients in there, right? I know it's not, okay, yeah, perfect. But like even a tin of chopped tomatoes, right? If for example, like this is what I used to do when I used to get bored of certain foods, but I don't get that anymore. I would make like a beef or maybe even a chicken stir fry. I would add onions. I love hot foods, right? So I'd add spiced chili. I'd add like dry spices, maybe some cayenne pepper or whatever it's called, if I pronounce that right, some chili flakes, salt, pepper. And then I would like fry it in some ghee oil or coconut oil or whatever. And then I would, add a tin of chopped tomatoes and just chuck all that in a pan, right? So it's all other than the tin of chopped tomatoes. There's probably a couple of ingredients there. Mainly all single ingredient foods, ladies and gents, right? And it tastes better. But you have got to be, quite creative in terms of what is going to taste good for you. But look, just keep it simple. Most of my clients are fine, eating good quality foods like meat, vegetables. They do mix it up a bit, and we do have recipes and everything else. But when you get used to eating those foods and you're cooking them right as well, you start enjoying them more and more. And I'm going to give you some examples anyway at the end. But look, just to kind of summarize this, really, here's some key strategies now, right? Without going too deep into that. But I was just saying like ingredients over calories. When I go into the store, I'm looking straight away at the ingredients, at everything that I buy. If I'm going to go and get something out of a packet, like let's say I fancy something different, I want to treat, I'm looking at the ingredients. If there's words I can't pronounce, or if there's more than like 4 or 5 ingredients in there, right? Which and things like dextrose and stuff like that, right? Like those foods, they sound like chemicals, ladies and gents. You got to use your mind here, right? And I'm not going to eat those foods because I know what they're going to do. Don't get me wrong, I am going to eat them. I've got a Quest bar now. I bought one today. I'm going to have 1 or 2 Quest bars a week. That's my limit, right? But I've got one today. I'm going to have my evening meal. But look, I avoid those foods. I minimize those foods because I know the impact they have in terms of your behaviors. So anyway, just to kind of wrap this up now, I want to drop some gems now that you can potentially implement, right? So if you're looking to lose fat, keep it off, and really kind of keep things very, very simple, have like at least 30 grams of protein with every meal, especially breakfast, bare minimum, to be honest. I would say you probably need a bit more than that with dinner and lunch. Most people, this is where most people slip up, right? Is most people, they have like an average amount of protein for lunch, right? They'll have like an average amount, maybe 30 grams or whatever. They'll have a good amount for dinner, but they'll have none, virtually any for breakfast. So I think that's what most people need to focus on. They need to have more protein for breakfast. So if you can shoot to have 30 grams of protein for breakfast, right? Ideally, get it through real food. You can have 6 eggs to hit that target. 6 eggs is 30 grams of protein. Done, right? Or if you don't want to eat 6 whole eggs, have two eggs and then 5 egg whites, for example. That's 30 grams. And then with that, maybe you can have some avocado. Again, like most people want bread and rice cakes and shit like that, or like, whatever it is with eggs. But if you can, not do that all the time, it's okay every now and then. It's totally fine. I think every now and then just having your eggs and your avocado, your eggs and butter, and maybe even, even if you had some like fiber, some, even some potato or something like that, right? It might sound quite extreme, but just to give you an example of 30 grams of protein, regardless, even if you have a shake, right? Let's say that might be a bit extreme for you. Even just having a protein shake, like 30 grams, make sure there's 30 grams in the shake with the serving you're having. Mix it with frozen berries, for example, because again, berries are high in fiber, low in sugar. And yeah, boom, done. Blend that up, tastes great, right? Vanilla protein with berries tastes awesome, for example, right? We have loads of different recipes that we use of protein powders. You can make, protein pancakes or whatever. But bottom line is aim to have at least 30 grams of breakfast. And I would say a bare minimum of 30 grams every meal. I don't even want to put that out there because that's still low protein to have in a whole day. But I would say a minimum of 30 grams of protein with breakfast. If you can set that one target to do, right, that looks like, a serving and a half of protein powder, or like I said, 6 eggs, or, have meat for breakfast. Like that's the easiest way to do it. If you've got leftover beef mince or stir fry from the night before, it's what I get clients doing. This is the best way. You're going to feel satiated. You're going to get more energy from having those foods. A bit of meat with eggs in the morning, boom, watch what happens. You won't be hungry for hours after, right? But again, if that's too extreme, you can use some protein powder, have some eggs or whatever, but 30 grams of protein. Yeah, and that's kind of like the one tip I wanted to give. And then the other one is obvious, right? You got to place a barrier in the way. You got to keep these ultra processed foods, highly palatable foods, out of the house. Only buy what you need. The other day, for example, I was in the superstore and I was like, oh, coconut yogurt whilst I'm here, it's cheaper in this store. I'll get like 2 big tubs. And I'm like, no, because then you'll just eat it for the sake of it, just because it's there. I don't need to eat. It's a lot of calories in the coconut yogurt that I don't always need, right? Yeah, I need a certain amount of calories, but I don't need it all the time because when I eat that, then I mix it with fruit, right? Okay, yeah, it's fruit and it's sugar, cool, and it's got fiber in it. But still, I want to eat when I combine the fats and sugar. Like if I combine that with bananas, for example, I sometimes want to keep eating. So I don't need to do it every day. So I just bought 1 tub, right? Because that's what I was going to eat over the next 2 days. Okay, I'll just buy that and that's it. Buy what you need and keep the rest out of the house. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting a losing battle. I know some of you might have kids and everything else that eat some of those foods. And that's a tough one, right? That's going to require more discipline. But the bottom line is that's why it's always a case of adding in. Hit your protein target first for the day. That's another simple strategy I used to do, especially when I was competing. I'm going to set myself my 200-gram protein target. I'm going to hit that target. If I want to eat, a treat later on, I'm going to allow myself to do it. And most of the time, I wouldn't do it. Sometimes I would. Most of the time, I wouldn't do it because I would be full after I've hit that protein target. You just don't feel as hungry, right? It blunts your appetite. So protein always needs to be top of mind, right? When it comes back to, ladies and gents, the perfect diet, right? Protein needs to be top of mind. And I was going to say something else. Yeah, for example, like today I had my protein powder because I knew I was going to go hungry. If I waited longer, I was going to go really hungry. And you don't want to be doing that, right? So I had a protein shake. I think it was about 11 a.m. And then I waited 3 hours then before I had my next meal and I was fine, right? But yeah, like I said last week, meat and fiber, right? If you can eat, meat and vegetables with most of your meals, for example, meat and salad and eggs, get eggs in every single day. It's very hard to go wrong. Very hard to go wrong. And when it comes to carbohydrates, let's say in the daytime you eat your meat and fiber, right? And add, if you want to add some fats like avocado or whatever, or when you're cooking like your olive oil, cool. And then if you just do that, so you're eating like lower carbs in the daytime. I mean, you can have potatoes and stuff and rice in the day. That's also fine. But there's a good strategy that tends to work sometimes is backloading carbohydrates. So you're having your high protein breakfast, right? You're having your meat and your vegetables or your salad, and then maybe add some fats, like I said, avocado, or maybe even a little bit of olive oil, depending on what your calorie intake is, right? Those added fats, remember, can make you fat quite easily. If you're adding too many added fats on top of the avocado and olive oil, like butter, ghee oil and those kind of things, like they literally make people fat. That's why a lot of people who turn carnivore ended up getting fatter. So you've still got to be mindful of those foods. But then doing that, and then in the evening having your carbohydrates in. So throwing in your carbs, but having single ingredient carbs, like your sweet or white potato, your rice, ideally white rice for most people, because brown rice contains anti-nutrients, your quinoa, those kind of things in the evening with your last meal. And then what you find then is, you're loaded up then for the next day. If you're going to train the next morning, you get more serotonin release in the evening as well. When you have carbohydrates, tend to relax you more, and fruit as well. Obviously fruit, even a bit of honey, they're single ingredient foods. Yeah, and that's what I tend to do. I tend to have those foods in the evenings. I like to earn my carbohydrates, and I do feel much sharper. And I get this feedback from a lot of clients, and it kind of makes sense because you're not spiking blood sugar. Like eating potatoes for lunch is not the same because it's high in fiber. That would be fine. Yes, it's a starchy carb, but throwing that in with your lunchtime meal, I would say for most people is going to be a good thing, because you're not like restricting too much down either carbs. But this is like, it depends on the person. There's so much variance, but that's kind of what works for me and a lot of clients as well, is backloading those carbs. So yeah, and that's where we're at. And just to give you one more example of my girlfriend, she's like me, she's super disciplined, but she's the same. As soon as she starts eating sugar, like she'll start just eating loads of sugar in the evenings for the sake of eating it. We all know that, right? When she's adding in like honey and she's having like Quest bars and stuff like that. And then she doesn't like 90% dark chocolate. So she'll have 78% dark chocolate just when she adds those sugar in, because when she gets anxious, she tends to turn to sugar and eat more, right? Some people don't eat as much. So it can be, when you've got those foods in the house, it can be a really slippery slope. All right, just to wrap this up, ladies and gents, right? A lot of people ask me about like snacks and stuff as well. And with snacks, like you want to be eating complete. If you're eating complete meals, like 3 solid meals a day, like I mentioned, you're having a good amount of protein, good amount of minerals, from mainly you're going to get that from, good quality sources of meat, like beef and stuff. You're going to get some of that from like vegetables and stuff as well, but you can get most of that through meat and eggs and stuff, for example. And you're having, a good amount of fat, essential fats, again, that you'll get from beef, eggs, salmon. Again, add in some fats here and there is fine. You shouldn't feel the need to snack. Again, having carbohydrates, single ingredient ones like potatoes, for example, you shouldn't feel the need to snack. And especially if you're staying hydrated. A lot of people think they need to snack. They're just not hydrated. That's number one, right? Staying hydrated. So basically, you shouldn't need a snack. But if you do need to snack, like I'll have my 90% dark chocolate as a snack here and there in the mornings. If I get, peckish, I'll have that with my black coffee and I'll crack on for another hour or two before I eat. I don't really have any other snacks, right? Because again, I eat complete meals. But here's some of the ones that I recommend to people, right? Beef jerky is always a good one. Make sure you get good quality grass-fed ones, because they normally add dextrose and bullshit to them. Again, look at the ingredients. It should just be beef jerky and salt mainly, maybe one other ingredient. That's it. So like beef jerkies are a great snack, high in protein, gives you a salt hit as well, which can help. Turkey roll-ups. Now, yeah, you could say turkey breast. Just get if you can just get proper turkey, ideally, proper turkey breast slices on a plate, right? Add a teaspoon of cream cheese, depending on what calories you're having and stuff like that. Maybe do low fat, but it depends. And then like a pickle or a strip of cucumber or tomato slice on the turkey and roll them up into wraps. That's, protein, a bit of fat, maybe a tiny bit of sugar or whatever you're getting from the cheese. Boom, that works well, right? Cottage cheese is another good one as well. I'd say full fat, good quality for most people, just full fat, because low fat a lot of the time is processed. But again, it depends on the calories that you have in and how processed they are. But just cottage cheese in general. Another snack could be full fat Greek yogurt with berries, right? That's a great one. And then you could even add some flax seeds or chia seeds or something like that. A bit more fiber and healthy fats, and also just texture, right? Adds to the texture when you've got that crunch. And add in a scoop of vanilla protein powder to the Greek yogurt, for example. That'll bump up the protein and keep you more satiated, and sometimes makes it taste better. Like tuna. If you're really in a rush, 1 cup's worth of tuna, right, with half an avocado, salt, dry spices, hard-boiled eggs. One of the best snacks you can have, to be honest. A lot of people will find that boring. And that's pretty much the ones I recommend, because they've all got a good amount of protein in. But look, again, you shouldn't need the snack. What I find is people who snack all the time, they need to work on their behaviors of food, because they're not having complete meals and they're eating. When you have snacks, that's all emotions. It's normally just emotions. It's just boredom, loneliness, sadness, whatever it is, right? When we snack, it's an emotional trigger most of the time, right? So yeah, they're the quote unquote healthier snacks I would aim for. I'm not for replacements as well. A lot of people, swap this for that. Swap a full fat Coke for a Diet Coke. Swap this Ben and Jerry's ice cream for Halo Top. Now, yeah, okay, you could do that. I used to do that. You're having lower calories when you have Halo Top. And to be honest, I got one client, I'm not going to name her. She is an anomaly where she can eat moderate those foods, and she can have Halo Top and stuff like that most days, and she doesn't overeat. She eats good quality foods for the most part, and she's good. She'll have a small amount, but most people can't do that. But Halo Top ice cream, for example, yes, I would prefer you to eat that, definitely, ladies and gents. as opposed to Ben and Jerry's, it is a good swap because most people they're not going to eat all whole foods straight away. I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, man. I need to just start getting some sponsors. But Halo Top is like, it's got a list of ingredients as long as my arm, by the way. But it's better, it's way better quality than Ben and Jerry's, and it's like 300 calories in the tub, and you're getting a good hit of protein, right? So yeah. But then people end up eating these things every day, and you end up just wanting to eat those foods over whole foods. That's the problem. And you just end up just not really getting to where you should get, if I'm honest. It's just patterns. You'll end up eating more calories. You just end up eating more of the other processed foods when you eat those foods. I see patterns, right? Unlike the one client that I had. And when I used to eat those Halo Tops all the time, I was generally just eating more calories because I still wanted to eat more of those. My diet was probably 20% ultra processed foods and 80% thing. Whereas now it's like virtually no ultra processed foods. You know what I mean? If you want to say a Quest bar is, then that's fine. Anyway, that's my rant over. One more thing I wanted to say, ladies and gents. I'm going to pre-warn everyone. You've probably heard of Ozempic, right? Well, there's a class of GLP-1 agonists. It's a type of medication. They work by activating the GLP-1 receptor, right? Now, what they do is they slow gastric emptying. You've obviously heard of Ozempic and how people are losing weight and everything else, because what they do is they inhibit the release of glucagon, right, and stimulate insulin production. So what happens then is it actually helps kind of regulate people's blood sugar levels and ultimately make people more insulin sensitive and reduce people's food intake, which is why people are getting such results. So I just wanted to pre-warn everyone that these GLP-1 agonists are on the market. There's a bunch of them. There's Ozempic and a few others. They're coming. People are using them. So I just wanted to make everyone aware that I'm hearing a lot about these things, and I'm trying to get an expert on to speak about this. There's actually a guy called Johan Hari. He's been on Joe Rogan. He's got amazing books, ladies and gents. I'm going to shout him out. The first book I read of his was called Lost Connections. That's one on mental health. I read one of his recent ones called Stolen Focus, ladies and gents. Amazing book about how we're distracted so much by technology. And there's a thing on there called mind wandering, which he recommends leaving your phone at home, going for a walk. But it's an amazing read. Also, he had another really good book as well. I forgot what it's called now. I'm trying to get him on the podcast because that's it. He's done one on Ozempic. He's done a whole book on Ozempic. So I'm trying to get him on the podcast to actually educate us on those things, because if people are going to be using them, we want to be using them responsibly. We want to be using them properly because who knows, maybe there will be some benefit. But to be honest, I'm always on the side of caution with these things. There's always going to be side effects. You've heard lots of nasty side effects for certain people. And there's going to be a dark side and there's never any shortcuts. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm looking at like shortcuts or anything like that because that's not what I'm about, right? I'm definitely not about that. But, some people are using these things to their benefit. So I want people to be aware of these things, but from what I've seen so far, I don't think, I think it is going to be groundbreaking, these things. But from where I'm standing now, I don't really see anything too drastic happening because the bottom line is all the stuff I've talked about, you still need to do. You know what I'm saying? You still got to do all the stuff, So you can look at it like the way I look at it. Okay, this might be a supplement people can use to help them, like you would use creatine. You know what I'm saying? You still got to do all the other work, like your training, your sleep, your movement, and your nutrition, right? So anyway, ladies and gents, with that, one more little plug on the fat loss challenge. Don't forget, the link is in the show notes. So if you want a chance to work with me on the 5-pound fat loss challenge, which starts on August the 12th, then fill out the type form in the show notes. Thanks for listening, ladies and gents. Remember, right? Information is bullshit. Like, knowledge is not power. I'll say it again. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. It's only power if you apply it, right? So apply one thing that I've said out of this podcast and don't bullshit yourself. Speak soon.